It is midnight in Washington, 9 in Sochi, and 2 p.m. on a Friday afternoon here in Seoul. I'm Conn-young. Let's get a check of the main stories we're following at this hour. Now, the two Koreas have just wrapped up a rare second round of high-level meeting on this Friday, seeking a compromise that would allow a planned reunion for families separated by the war to go ahead. Now, this despite the North's objections to South Korea-U.S. military drills that overlap with the reunions. We'll connect live with our correspondent at Seoul's Unification Ministry for the details. In an attempt to restore the financial soundness of local governments, Korea will implement a new system that would allow the governments to declare bankruptcy, upon which the central government would intervene. And over in Sochi, Korean short tracker Hwang Sung-hee wins the bronze medal in the women's 500 meters at the Sochi Winter Olympics in a frenetic race that saw 3 of the 4 finalists wiped out. It's the first medal in the event for a Korean skater in 16 years. Now, we'll have those stories and more, but first, right here on the peninsula. High-level officials from the two Koreas met again at the truce village of Panmunjom earlier this Friday morning for the second time in just 3 days. And we're just learning that the officials have wrapped up that meeting. For more, let's go live to our correspondent Hwang Sung-hee at Seoul's Unification Ministry. So, Sung-hee, what are we getting? What is the latest?
Conn-young, it took the officials less than 4 hours to reach an agreement, with the talks coming to an end at 1:15 p.m., which was about an hour ago. Now, the officials held one session and one round of separate discussions between the two chief delegates before reaching an agreement. Now, details on today's agreement have yet to be released, but an official at Seoul's Unification Ministry says that the general atmosphere of today's meeting was amicable. The two sides are believed to have focused on narrowing their differences on the upcoming reunions for families separated since the Korean War, as well as the joint military drills between Seoul and Washington. At issue was North Korea's demand that the South postpone the key resolve and full legal exercises to sometime after the family reunions take place. The reunion event is scheduled to take place from February 20th to the 25th, and this overlaps with the military drills that begin at the end of the month. The presidential office of Cheongwade had reiterated its stance earlier this morning that the South will not let the military drills disrupt plans for the family reunions and vice versa. So the big question now is whether the two Koreas reached a compromise. For now, we don't know if today's talks is an opportunity to improve inter-Korean ties or to worsen it, but we will get some more details once the South Korean chief delegate Kim Kyu-hyun returns from the truce village of Panmunjom, as he is expected to give a press briefing here at the Unification Ministry. So when that happens, I'll be back with more updates. For now, back to you, Conn-young.
All right, Hwang Sung-hee, ARIRAN's Unification Ministry correspondent, reporting live on today's hastily scheduled inter-Korean talks. Thank you, Sung-hee, and we'll have the specifics of the outcome of that meeting as soon as they are announced. Now, U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry called on South Korea and Japan to iron out their differences on history issues before wrapping up a 2-day visit to Seoul. Now, as part of Washington's efforts to boost its presence in the region, Kerry now heads to Beijing, or he has arrived in Beijing, where he is expected to urge China to take on a greater role in resolving the North Korean nuclear issue. Ji Myung-gil has more.
U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry said it is up to South Korea and Japan to overcome their differences on matters related to history and forge a more positive relationship before wrapping up a 2-day visit to Seoul and heading to Beijing.
So while the United States obviously has a strong interest in the relationship and in the security component of the relationship, it's up to Japan and the Republic of Korea to put history behind them and move the relationship forward.
Relations between Seoul and Tokyo have fractured in recent weeks over Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe's visit to the controversial Yasukuni Shrine last December and separate claims to the Korea-controlled Dokdo Island. Kerry also said the ongoing animosity undermines trilateral cooperation between the U.S., South Korea, and Japan in dealing with the provocative North. Kerry also met with President Park Geun-hye and other key officials during his two-day stay and reaffirmed that Seoul and Washington are in agreement when it comes to the denuclearization of North Korea.
Today, we reaffirm our commitment to a common goal, which is the verifiable denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula in a peaceful manner. And we are committed to going to talks only if there is a clarity with respect to the steps that need to be taken for denuclearization by the North.
He also said China can do more now to urge North Korea to begin taking action to come into compliance with its international obligations. This was Kerry's second visit to Seoul and his fifth trip to Asia as the top U.S. diplomat. He travels next to Beijing and will then head to Jakarta before moving on to Abu Dhabi. Kim Young-gil, ARIRANG News.
Former U.S. Ambassador to South Korea Donald Gregg has urged North Korea to release a jailed Korean-American Kenneth Bae. Wrapping up a 5-day visit to Pyongyang, Gregg met with reporters at Beijing Capital International Airport, where he also expressed his hope that Bae will be freed soon. The former ambassador also expressed his regret that the North canceled an invitation for U.S. Human Rights Envoy Robert King. Gregg, who is now the chairman of the Pacific Century Institute, made the visit on the invitation of the North Korean Foreign Ministry with 4 other representatives from that institute. And Bae was arrested in November 2012 and sentenced to 15 years of hard labor on accusations that he was planning to overthrow the regime. Meanwhile, North Korea appears to have accelerated excavation at its nuclear bomb testing site in the northeastern part of that country, but a test is not believed to be imminent. Referring to its new satellite images, the U.S. Korea Institute at Johns Hopkins University says North Korea likely started work last May on a new tunnel at its Punggye site, where it has conducted its 3 previous nuclear tests, the most recent being in February 2013. The institute estimates the pile of earth excavated from the tunnel has doubled over the last few weeks. The institute adds it's unlikely Pyongyang intends to use this tunnel for its next nuclear test, since 2 other tunnels at the site appear to be complete. Now, the push to better promote the Korean name for the body of water that separates Korea and Japan is spreading across the United States. Following up on the success seen in the state of Virginia, New York is considering similar legislation. And one of the people behind this grassroots movement in Washington sat down with our Kim Han-ul to explain how it all began.
54-year-old Peter Kim witnessed a moment that will go down in the history of Korean Americans. It all started 2 years ago with a conversation he had with his son, who was in 5th grade at the time.
I asked my son, Chris, do you know the sea between Korea and Japan? Yes, Daddy. What's the name of it? Sea of Japan. So I really got upset. And I told him that it's not true. It's EC, and you call it Tongye. And he said, Daddy, it's in the textbook. That's how I learned in schools.
That's when Peter decided to take action. He went on to form a group which later spearheaded a grassroots movement of Korean Americans in the D.C. metro area.
I mean, there were a lot of people coming from Washington area, driving 2 hours to Richmond. They had to get up 3 o'clock in the morning. I mean, it's a cold weather here. Sometimes it was snowing, but still, senior citizen people, they just wanted to go and show up at the General Assembly and pressure the Democratic, the delegates and senators to vote for EC bill.
However, the long and arduous journey was far from easy.
The most difficult one was the House Education Subcommittee, 9 members. Governor McAuliffe's staff actually went to them to stop the bill. And they actually did, and it was a 4-4 tie. They had to vote again and barely passed in 5-4.
Although last week's victory in Virginia means the same law will be applied to 7 other states in the southeastern U.S., Peter Kim says his hopes do not stop there.
So the journey in Virginia has come to an end, but do you think this journey should stop or continue elsewhere?
I think it should continue. I did my part, and other Korean Americans should step up and stick together and continue this movement until 2017, where IHO meets, and hopefully IHO agrees on both names, EC and Sea of Japan.
김한울, 아리랑 뉴스, Washington.
And we move over to our special coverage of the Sochi 2014 Winter Olympics. And we are, of course, joined by our Lee Tae-ho. Good afternoon to you, Tae-ho.
Good afternoon.
Last night was a crazy night for Team Korea, especially for all the Koreans who stayed up to watch the short track speed skating event.
And I think that's quite the understatement. First up, we had the 500-meter women's short track event where Hwang Sung-hee landed the bronze for Team Korea, making it the second medal for Korea at the 2014 Games, of course. Now, this was a very, very crazy event. There was a lot of commotion, but regardless, Park did very well.
Right. I mean, you know, there was a lot of controversy, and there actually is an ongoing controversy regarding that event. So tell us all about it.
Well, what happened basically was two skaters behind Park got entangled with each other, causing a crash, taking down Park with them. And this was really unfortunate. It was really dangerous as well. And by the looks of it, it was kind of a sad moment for all of the skaters involved. But for this, it was Britain's Elise Christie who was ruled the cause of the crash, and she happened to be the second person to cross the line. And of course, with the penalization, the silver was taken away from her, and Arianna Fontana of Italy got the silver, and Park, of course, landed the bronze.
Well, you know, going into the race, I mean, first off, just as a viewer, I mean, four competitors, 3 goes down. There's just 1 skating normally. I would have actually thought that they would redo the event or restart the competition, but that wasn't the case. And going into this competition, I think the favorites actually were Korea's Hwang Sung-hee and the Italy's Fontana, right? Mm-hmm. So, but then the one who was trailing behind, the fourth, out of the 4 actually got the gold medal.
Well, you know, that's interesting because with short track, I think this is one of the most nerve-wracking sports and events in all of the Winter Games, because you never know what is going to happen. You never know how the results are going to be turned out, because regardless of who the favorites are, you never know when a collision is going to occur, when somebody slips or trips. So I think that was truly the case yesterday, and Lee Jianru of China, who took home the gold, basically just coasted to the finish line with everybody else, the rest of the 3 skaters in the event going down, of course. And for anybody who watched the event, we saw Park tumble down once and then get up to tumble again. So it was really moving to see that she got up, she finished the race. Regardless of how she was going to finish, she made it through the end.
Right. Now, Park still has another chance for the gold.
Well, you know, she did have a chance because she was going to be participating in the 1,500-meter event, but due to the results of the crash, she sustained a right knee injury, and she's been withdrawn from the event altogether.
Right. So we were just getting reports about an hour ago that Park has officially drawn herself out of the 1,500 competition. Now, well, she's still young, and we will see her in the coming years in large events like this. Now, receiving a medal for Korea in this event is quite significant, isn't it?
Definitely, because it has been 16 years since Korea landed a medal in the women's 500 short track event. 16 years is a long time to go without a medal, of course, in any event, but with Korea being so favored and doing so well in short track, it was a long, long time before their second medal here.
Right, and we also were expecting a lot more from the 16-year-old Shin Seok-hee, right?
That's right. Now, she was a gold medal favorite, definitely a contender. However, she failed to qualify, but she's still young. She's only 16 years old, and by the time the 2018 Winter Olympics in Pyeongchang arrives, she'll still only be 20 years old. So I'm sure we'll be seeing a lot more from her, and I think she'll be a little bit more fired up.
Right, right. We look forward to all that. Now, let's go over to the men's race.
Now, the 5,000-meter men's event was another disappointment for Team Korea, with Lee Ho-seok crashing into the American speed skater, or that's how the judges ruled at least, and which disqualified the Korean team from advancing to the next round, of course.
Right, and of course, I think the Russian team with Victor on leading the race sailed right through with going into the finals in first place. So, well, we'll be looking forward to actually his performance as well, because we all have a close eye on him as well.
Definitely.
Now, long track speed skating events also took place where Lee Sang-hwa participated.
That's right. Our very own gold medalist Lee Sang-hwa from the 500-meter speed skating event participated in her second and final event for the Winter Games. She placed 12th, but regardless, she did very well. She tried to, I think, a little bit more enjoy herself for this race. It's not her strongest event. But regardless, she's brought home one gold medal already, so big congratulations to her, of course.
And now it seems like yesterday was a very hectic day, to say the least, for both men's and women's events.
And you know,
for Team Korea.
Yes, there were tears on both sides, and it wasn't just for Team Korea. The Britain skater Elise Christie, she was also in tears about going down, because if you think about it, we've talked about this a lot. 4 years of preparation for all the athletes to go to the Olympics and to kind of result in a crash and being disqualified after thinking that you won the silver medal. I mean, this is rough for any athlete.
Right, right. I mean, you know, Olympics itself is nerve-wracking, but I think the short track speed skating event itself, it's more of a tiptoe than others.
Definitely.
Also, last night it was the start of one of the most popular winter sports in the Olympics, figure skating.
That's right. Now, the men's short program took place last night with Yuzuru Hanyu of Japan setting a brand new world record at 101.45. And of course, the crowd was really disappointed when their only competitor in the event, Plashenko, pulled out and decided to retire right there on the spot. But definitely Yuzuru, somebody to keep an eye on. He had totally electrified the crowd with his performance, and I think we have a new rising star in this event. Right,
and also Yuzuru is, the Korean fans were keeping a close eye on him because his coach is Brian Orser, who actually brought Queen Yeona, or Kim Yeona, to her gold medal in Vancouver 4 years ago, and now he moves on to another skater and brings him the gold medal as well.
And of course, it seems that Brian Orser has a knack for finding these young talent because he's only 19 years old and really coaching them up to their talent. So we'll be keeping a close eye on him because the only two gold medal favorites right now, or contenders going into the long program, are both Yuzunu and, of course, Patrick Chan of Canada, who is the record holder for the long program. So it'll definitely be an exciting event.
Right, we'll be looking forward to that. And another thought that I came to is that Brian Orser is actually only a silver medalist. And so during his career as an athlete, he didn't do as well as, coaching. So I think different people have a, different talent for being an athlete or a coach.
Definitely, and seeing the results of both Kim Yeona and, of course, Yuzunu last night, I mean, it shows that Brian Orser is one of probably the best coach in figure skating right now, because Yuzunu is heavily favored to win the gold medal right now.
Right, and speaking of Kim Yeona, we saw a glimpse of her practice.
We did indeed, and it wasn't just us. There was about a dozen cameras who were all focused on Kim Yeona, of course, for her first open practice at Olympic Park. Now, this is really interesting because all the other competitors, they're actually in nearby countries practicing for their short program next week, and to keep their practices as close as possible. But we see the reigning champion right now, Kim Yeona, open to the reporters and the media, being very confident, showing off her skills, and to show that she still has that composure, she's still here, and she's still the champion, of course.
All right, we'll be looking forward to all the events, including today's events as well, and also looking forward to Monday, where when you will be bringing us more updates from the Sochi Winter Olympics.
That's right.
All right, see you then.
All right.
All right, with the Sochi Winter Olympics in full swing, there is increased awareness about some winter sports that usually fly well under the radar here in Korea. For the plucky few that have picked the sports up, the lack of proper training facilities in Korea hasn't stopped them becoming Olympians. Kim Hyun-bin reports.
Skeleton racer Yoon Sung-bin only hopped on a sled a year ago, but before you know it, Yoon became the first Korean to qualify for the Olympics in the sport. For now, his goal is to place in the top 15, but going forward, he has even bigger dreams.
I'm looking at the long term for the Olympics, and to gain experience, I will try to show you my progress since the summer.
Korea's ski jump team failed to qualify for the final on the normal hill ski jump this week. But the athletes have put their disappointment aside and are now focused on qualifying for the large hill ski jump competition.
Up to 30th place gets to compete in the final, and our goal is to do just that. But personally, I would like to place in the top 10.
Curling is another sport that did not get much love before. But the other day, Team Korea's ladies team shocked everyone by putting up a great fight against the number 1 seed, Sweden. Their record stands at 2 wins and 2 losses in SOCHI, and they are scheduled to face China for the 5th round. The team needs 6 wins out of 9 preliminary round matches to win a ticket to the semifinals. Kim Hyun-bin, ARIRANG News.
All of the day's important events. Events close to home, around the world.
The second half last, figure out what winners.
The arts and culture scene and the heart of global business.
Experts added that
ARIRANG News has your whole day covered.
the legislature will convene a plenary session this Wednesday and vote on the government restructuring.
Korea's public sector debt was over 820 trillion won, roughly $770 billion in 2012, or about $15,000 of debt per capita, according to new government data. ARIRANG's Hwang Sung-hee has this report.
Korea's public sector debt represented 64.5% of the nation's gross domestic product in 2012. The Finance Ministry said Friday that the total amount of debt owed by the central and provincial governments and non-financial state-run companies stood at over 820 trillion won, or roughly $770 billion as of the end of 2012. That is up more than $63 billion from the previous year. The ministry said the debt figures represent new government data that's based on the latest international guidelines set by the International Monetary Fund. The data excludes money borrowed by state-run financial companies like the Bank of Korea and the Korea Exim Bank. The ministry explained that including the debt of state-run financial companies could distort the final figures because their deposits are counted as debt. With the new data, the ministry aims to offer the public a clearer picture of the debt situation in the public sector and encourage public sector businesses to operate more transparently. The Korean government recently launched a drive to reform the nation's public organizations, urging them to reduce debt and streamline their business operations. The nation's public organizations have been facing mounting criticism for having lax management despite their growing debt. The IMF said that the new government data is a measure of the administration's will to make data collection practices more transparent and bring them in line with international standards. Hwang Sung-hee, ARIRANG News.
Now, the Korean government will implement a new system that would allow local governments to declare themselves bankrupt. The Public Administration Ministry presented the plan to President Park on Friday, which aims to restore local governments to financial health. Now, it will also hold local government heads responsible for their poor fiscal management rather than putting the burden on the public. Once a bankruptcy is declared, the central government or higher level office will intervene to reform the local government's finances. President Park had previously said local governments' lax financial management practices are a big burden to the nation and ordered the ministry to implement strong measures to control local government debt, which had ballooned to $4.7 billion as of 2012. Let's now turn to our Michelle Park at the Weather Center for the latest forecast. Michelle, so let's begin with Sochi.
Well, Conn-young, it's 17 degrees Celsius in Sochi right now, which is about 10 degrees higher than Korea. And it's going to be warm and sunny day with very few clouds. Now moving over to the weather conditions in Korea, the snow has stopped in Gangwon-do province, but there may be another round of snow over the weekend. But today it will feel like spring in most of the regions with highs of up to 9 degrees. For more details, let's move over to our satellite map. We have partly cloudy skies all over the nation today, but we will have that clear up by tonight, able to see the full moon. Now going over to the readings, Seoul will top out at 7 in the afternoon. Meanwhile, the southern cities such as Gwangju and Busan will peak up to 10 and 6 degrees respectively. Now down onto Jeju Island, we can expect a partly cloudy skies. Dokdo will get up to 2, while Mangkeungang tops out at -6. Well, that's all for now. I'm Michelle Park, and back to you, Conn-young.
Thank you, Michelle, for that. And that's all from me at this hour. Thanks for watching. I'll be back with more of the day's latest at 4 p.m. Korea time. See you then.